The ocean is where I go to find peace and a place where I belong. It's where I feel most alive. The thing that keeps me going is the thought of what is out there.
It's the holy grail for any surfer, the perfect wave. And one surfer, Kerby Brown, found his literally at the ends of the earth.
I've always had my own personal demons. When I don't have the ocean, I tend to turn to alcohol and drugs.
I could see it in his eyes. It was like a determination to self-destruct.
I feel like we're all just forced to be part of this machine. That's the monster I've been trying to get away from my whole life. I'm pushing myself as far as I can, but that comes at a heavy cost.
It's like getting me to come to their funeral.
So many of those waves is on a dry rock.
If you hit your head, good chance you're not coming up.
You know, you could do everything right and it doesn't matter in some of these waves.
There's no water, it's just rock. Why do we do this again?
Maybe I'm searching for something that's not even there.
It's a beautiful thing to see that connection he has with the ocean.
There's a huge fear in not coming home to my family and not being there for my kids.
Bye, sweetie.
Bye, Dad.
I really don't want to have those thoughts going through my head while I'm trying to do what I do.
I don't think it will end until we can't do it anymore.
In cinemas from March 10 is Facing Monsters. It profiles enigmatic West Australian slab wave surfer Kerby Brown on his quest to ride the ferocious waves on Australia's southern ocean, waves that no one on the planet has surfed before. It's a film about fear, addiction and family, and the man behind exploring the light and dark that is Kerby Brown is director Bentley Dean. Thanks for joining us on Screen Watching, mate.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, Simon.
Congratulations on this extraordinarily beautiful, extraordinarily insightful film. Tell us your first impressions of Kerby upon meeting him. Did the story you wanted to tell about the man become immediately apparent?
Look, it was actually a long process. Like I think the story had actually been kicking around for some years before I actually came on board, and in fact, it was 2 weeks into shooting with another great documentary filmmaker, Jeffrey Smith, who had to pull out for personal reasons, and I was actually kind of parachuted in. And so my first taste, I guess, of Kerby Brown was through the rushes, because in order to do the film, I had to travel from Melbourne and quarantine for 2 weeks in WA. So, I mean, there were lots of telephone calls, I guess, and got to know him over the phone and through the rushes, and also a lot of people telling me about how shy he is, and, you know, he's a very difficult person to sort of like make open up, and not so articulate, you know, with his words, but with his actions, etc., etc. And I guess I saw that as being the biggest challenge, I guess, of the film, is like, you know, how do you get to know such a person? And look, I have to say that, yes, he was quite quiet, you know, when I first met him in person, but I feel like over the course of the weeks and months even that we spent together, he just became more and more articulate. And I'm not sure how you feel about the film, but I feel like, you know, the guy's like a bit of a poet, actually. Like I love the way he expresses himself, and I think it's one of the most beautiful thought tracks that I've recorded.
I totally agree. And it's interesting that you say that about him being a quiet gentleman. He seems very unassuming, and you literally sort of spoke to my next question. Was he always comfortable with the camera in front of him? And at any point did he want any sort of control over how he was depicted? He seems like a man who has a very sort of clear vision of himself and who he wants to be. Did that sort of impact how you directed the film?
Yeah, like certainly. Like I mean, I guess where I come from as a filmmaker, like I'm a big believer that the people that you're making a film not so much about, you're making a film with them, and that you ultimately want them to be happy, you know, with not just the product but the process itself. It's, I mean, for me, I can't see a point in making films unless that's the case. Look, so yeah, we're constantly talking about that sort of issues, and there's a level of trust that needs to be developed as well. And there can be sort of like difference of opinions of like the projection of yourself and things that I see. I go, well, actually, you know, there's something to you here that I don't know, maybe you can't even see just yet. And so, but it was always like, I guess the process was always very generous and very open. I just made the decision just to launch straight in as soon as we were on the ground at, you know, that first sort of break that you see in the film at Gubba Gubba. You know, again, everyone, including himself, said, "Oh, you know, let's just take it easy, get to know each other, etc." I said, "No, let's roll," and that's what we did. And I think that really kind of like set the tone. He was quite, I think, happy with the way in which it was being approached, and I think we got some good stuff.
Yeah, you absolutely did. It's a wonderful portrait of what, as you say, turns out to be a very complex man. The film opens on this most breathtaking image, Kerby floating on this vast pink lake, and your drone camera does some extraordinary work. I thought the colour might have been added in post, but this is all a real place. I didn't know about the pink lakes of Australia. Where did you shoot that?
That was actually close. Well, I say close in WA. Nothing's really close, but it was about an hour's drive from where he grew up, in the area of Kalbarri, which is kind of like, I guess, halfway up the coast of WA, about 6 or 7 hours north of Perth. And I was actually, you know, again during my lockdown, I was just like researching locations and possibilities. And again, I saw the pink lake and I said, "What?" Probably a bit like you, just like, is that real? And of course, it's got nothing to do with surfing. It's a lake, you know, it's flat by definition. But yeah, I was also at the same time thinking, okay, how do you try and depict the subjective experience of, say, a near drowning experience, or what it's like to be on a complete high, you know, in the middle of a wave, and without it, you know, being literal, because I always feel like as close as you can get to, say, even virtual reality, it's never enough. I think that what cinema does well is it works well with metaphor. And so I guess I was thinking about, okay, well, what might do that? And I went, well, let's try the pink lake.
It works beautifully. It absolutely works beautifully. And leading into his injuries, we don't want to give too much of the story away. Although I guess, you know, he's a public figure, we know what happened to him. But it was it's quite an extraordinary image and a beautiful one to open, and then sort of, you know, come back to later in the film.
Yeah, I thought the drone work in particular was amazing. That was done by Jeremy Ashton, who I got told was our sound recordist. But turns out he's exceptionally good on a drone. That was kind of like a real discovery for me.
To understand Kerby, you have to understand his connection to the ocean at its most dangerous, yet, you know, its most alluring. How did you and your ocean DOP, Rick, set about, I guess, what I'd call the character of the sea? This is a film that sort of captures the movement of the water, the underwater shelf, the rocks that Kerby sort of cheats death upon regularly. You create this extraordinary character of the ocean, and that must have taken an extraordinary amount of visual invention to achieve. Yeah,
look, Rick and I spoke a lot, and Jeremy, for that matter, spoke a lot about treating the ocean and the land, you know, surrounding it as almost as a character. And that was really important. I mean, I think it's important, you know, almost in every single film I've done. It feels like the land is a character for me, and Again, like during that research, stage, it became clear in conversations with Kerby that like all of these key moments in his life happened at key, separate, extraordinary locations, and you could not separate his experience with, these places in the sea. And so for that reason, they had to become real, they had to become visceral, they almost had to become have personalities. And we had to do whatever we could in order to evoke that, and just happened to be blessed with some really extraordinary talent to capture it, and a bit of luck, and also just Mother Nature, just providing some absolutely stunning sequences.
Yeah, huh? I don't know when Madman's PR team booked this interview between you and I, but I'm a mad keen, not a surfer at all, never stood on a board, but I love surfing films. I've just come from the Ocean Film Festival, so I was watching I was watching this extraordinary imagery, and Kerby describing the waves as steep and full, and seeing them the way they curl over the top, and just the volume of water that's with them. Before we go on, I should ask you to explain what a slab wave is. I've used that in the opening, and many people may not know the term.
Yeah, look, it was new to me. Likewise, I'm not a surfer either. Look, the way in which Kerby describes it is like a large volume of water coming from very deep to very shallow quite quickly. So it's almost like the water gets sucked off like a fairly large sort of surface area. There's one point in the film which I really wanted to sort of like get across it, because it was really important to describe what a slab was, because it's not so much the height of it, it's the sheer volume of water. So kind of what it looks like, it's like those pictures of tsunamis that you see, where it's like, you'll be looking at it, say, from the front angle, and if you're able to have enough elevation and look at the top of it, it's just kind of like flat ocean. So the wave is actually this hollowed out bit of ocean, and if that lands on top of you, it's not good. It's like the whole ocean landing on top of you.
Which brings me to another point, and I'll play a bit of the devil's advocate here, because in the film, Kerby's father says all they want to see is the crashes, all they want to see is the wipeouts and the horrible moments, and it's only a good footage if you nearly get killed doing it. And then your film sort of spins on that. Your film sort of takes that life and very near-death moment that Kerby goes through, and are you guilty of what Glenn Brown sort of accuses the surfing industry of, or is there more to this than just wanting to capture a guy wipeout?
Yeah, like that's always that's in the room, and was in the room right from the very beginning, and discussed up in an absolutely frank way right from the beginning. Like Kerby's point of view, and of course, like the ethics of it. Do you want to be involved in it in the first place as a filmmaker, etc.? Something that could kill someone, Look, his point of view was, look, I've been surfing these waves with or without a camera being present all my life, and I will continue to do so. We discussed also, like, okay, well, if the shit does hit the fan, is it okay to film you in whatever state you're in back on the support vessel? And we talked about that in advance, and he says like absolutely, and so that is what we did. Look, I guess he views it as part of his life, and his brother's exactly the same. Like there was at the time that it did happen, there was a rumor that got out amongst the crew that we weren't going to use it because it was too distressing, that footage, and both Kerby and his brother were like incensed. It's like, you got to include it. It's who we are. This is what it's all about. And so like you have to. It makes me nervous. I don't know if I'll do it again, like because I was actually the person filming on the boat, right. and I was glad for it, because it's extremely distressing. He's white. You think, oh my God, is this guy going to die? Yeah. And simultaneously thinking, I don't think I'm going to do this ever again. And like, yeah. So it was all out in the open. And I actually think that one of the main reasons that Kerby wants a film crew in certain instances is so that he can study the waves in more detail. He really wants to know everything about it. He's like a scientist when he, studies these things, and it's part of his brain, I think.
The one that taught him a lesson, though, that was a nasty piece of footage. That was it was pure documentary filmmaking. That obviously the wipeout, but also those moments afterwards when you had to catch him, and there's such an immediacy to it. It's film and filmmaking at its best. It was terrific scenes. I want to talk about you briefly. Tell us about the whirlwind of attention an Oscar nomination brings with it. A few years after all the madness, how do you put the TANNA experience into perspective?
Oh, look, it just keeps on giving, I reckon. It's actually just saw one of the leads in the film is actually picking fruit over in Adelaide. I just caught up with him last week, in fact. Yeah. He plays the father in the film. And I actually revealed to the guy who's like managing the workers over there, because I wanted to ensure he's getting a fair wage, and that oh man, he's seen the red carpet, like he's he's stomped the red carpet, like, yeah, and he kept that quiet, didn't he? And we've maintained a relationship with all the folks, and they're still real proud of it. We're all real proud of it. It wasn't one of those you get nominated for an Oscar and then all of a sudden these offers start flowing in, but it could be the nature of like the style of the film. It wasn't a Hollywood film. It was a very organic.
You weren't on the list of direct Avengers or anything like that.
No. I think it was kind of just a freak of nature, and good on the Oscars for nominating it. I think
Sure. I guess finally your work to varying degrees. And I was looking for a through line in your films, and I guess the themes of rebellion or that outsider narrative are always present to varying degrees. The very personal journeys like Facing Monsters and TANNA and Contact, and then a bigger political stage like The Siege and The President versus David Hicks. How do you put your filmography, for want of a better word, into perspective? These are obviously themes that are important.
Yeah, it's quite an eclectic mix, isn't it, really, on the surface?
I struggled with finding a through line, because it is an eclectic mix.
Yeah, look, I should fess up. Like, I'm not one of these filmmakers who was like came out of the womb with a Super 8 camera. Like, I didn't have this yearning to be a filmmaker from day dot. It wasn't really my thing. It was kind of something I stumbled on. Like, quite literally, I found some photographers whilst bushwalking, in Tasmania, and they taught me how to use a camera. I thought, oh wow, this is great, and saw an opportunity actually for a way in which you could maintain an eclectic interest in the world and still hopefully pay the rent. So that I guess is the through line. It's just like I follow what's interesting or what's I feel is important or engaging or what will be fun, and I'm just view myself as one of these extremely lucky individuals to find something I love doing and at the same time, like I say, pays the rent. So that's.
Look, you've made a wonderful film in Facing Monsters. Such beautiful cinematography and such an in-depth look at a man and his obsessions and his family, of course, as well. There's some beautiful scenes in there with his brothers and father and his partner as well. So, Bentley Dean, thank you so much for being on Screen Watching it, and all the best with the film, which goes into national release on March 10. Thank you, mate.
Thank you, Simon. And look, I have to tell you that you gave us a fantastic quote when you saw Contact. It made it onto the poster.
Yes, it did. One of my very first poster quotes.
That's right. So thank you very much for that.
My pleasure, mate. My pleasure. All the very best.
All right. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.